Hey, welcome everybody to another in our series of podcasts entitled Humanizing Healthcare. The idea of this podcast is for education, training, learning, challenging, providing you as a listener with the concept of an IKA, information, which we will share today. Hopefully that converts to knowledge and action that you will take and continue to improve yourself and to improve your organization, your relationships with your staff, and the eventual outcome of improving quality of care that we provide to patients. And the word humanizing is one that talks about respect, compassion, listening, and transparency. And I think those are four real key words that go along with the theme of the program, which is to suggest that humanizing and efficiency are not competitors, they're collaborators. And by that, what we mean is that there's an opportunity for you to focus on your humanized relationships, not only with your staff, but all the patients that you serve, but also to think efficiency. And as we look at the AI world and what our future looks like, I think it's really important that we focus on the human side and not forget that as we look at efficiency. And today, I am thrilled to introduce Dr. Ted Pirog. And I say doctor, surprisingly so, he's got a PhD. And I didn't know that, and yet he's my neighbor. So I'm just finding out some wonderful things about him. But Ted is a recently retired management leadership type of person, if you will, from ExxonMobil. And rather than me ramble on about all of his wonderful qualifications, Ted, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Owen. Thanks. It's great to be here. My name is Ted Pirog. As Owen mentioned, I have a PhD in chemical engineering. I also have a bachelor's from Rutgers, and my PhD is from Purdue. I worked for ExxonMobil for 28 years. I started off a long time ago in 1998, believe it or not, in Heritage Exxon right before it merged with Mobil. I started off in a research company working on um, a lot of different types of upstream research types of problems. Worked in a variety of different assignments. First few assignments were more technical. Then I got to go move on to moving some early managerial type things. I got to go work in offshore West Africa. I've got to go work with our corporate office and moving into more strategic strategy type roles, working on something we call the energy outlook, which looks at the history and the long-term forecast for energy production across everything for the next 40, 50 years so that we can form the proper strategies for the corporation. Transferred into mergers and acquisitions. I've worked in some senior management roles within the unconventional part of the business, where I ended up last working in the Permian Basin for about 10 years, working in Midland and in the Delaware, New Mexico, in a variety of different assignments.
So you've been a busy young man, and I emphasize the young because you're too young to be retired. How's that?
Well, yeah, I'm 55, so I retired. Once I get turned 55, I got reached that magic age I could retire. So
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, so I mean, I'm not done. I still do a lot of other things, so I'm keeping busy.
I think a lot of us that are listening to you are going to be very jealous about the fact that you were able to retire at age 55.
Well, it just takes
But
planning and work. A lot of dedication, having a long term view towards that.
yeah, well, that's a good bit of wisdom to share with others right there, as long as they have this vision in terms of what the direction is,
Mhm.
and so on. But Ted, in your role in management of folks, how did you see yourself in managing people? And I think at one time you told me you had like 80 people that reported to you. It's in some level and so on as you went on. That's a huge number to try to hold accountability for and so on, and in
Mhm.
particular how a huge number to train. And how did you focus on the relationship building kind of concepts of working with them?
So I've always seen myself as more of a servant based leader. So
Oh,
what I mean by that is not someone who is there just to lay down edicts and make people just do what I'm telling them to do. But I think fundamentally what I've been doing my whole career, even before I knew it. I was I was employing and using lean. And that, people that are
Mm.
probably familiar with your podcast are probably very familiar with what lean is. But the way I
Mhm.
see lean is just a way of empowering your people, listening to them, understanding who the people are on. So, working on the coal face, so to speak, what problems they're working on and how they can improve it and become more efficient. And my role was there is to help them become better. And the better my people became, and the more integrated they became, the better we became as a team. So I felt my role was to train the people, empower the people, and listen to them and have them come up with a lot of the problems and the
So
solutions.
so when you say, you said a couple of key words there. One word was train and the other one was listen. So, I can you kind of expand on how were you able to listen to or get to know 80 people? That's an insurmountable amount of things to do.
No, I mean, first of all, I think you have to actually care. And when you care about the people, you spend the time to listen to them and want to know them and learn from them. And it comes takes time, but it just takes some dedication. I think there's ways you can do it like more informally, like if you're like walking around the floor and just creating opportunity for you just to have time to interact with people. One of the things I've noticed is, I mean, that's one way you can just meet people and get to learn about them, learn about their family members, learn about what they're doing, learn about their job, learn about what
Oh,
they're working.
to throw in a lean term, that's Gamba, right?
Just go to Gemba,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that's very important. And then there's I say it's an informal thing you're walking around, but you can put that on your calendar. I would have a half an hour at least twice a week on my calendar just to walk around. As important as any business meeting that I think I would have with any senior executive, my half an hour walk arounds with the people was equally important. And I would keep a log and a list of who I met that day. We all have one of the things I'm very conscious of is that as people, we all have biases. And there are some people that you probably gravitate to more easily, and you will tend to just spend more time with those people. So I would
Mhm.
make sure that I spent equal time with everybody. So people that I wouldn't necessarily want to go, wouldn't think to go of seeing because maybe they weren't as, some people are happier than others, right? And so you tend to go with the people you want to make you laugh and want to be happy with. But I would force myself to say, no, I'm going to go meet everybody and learn about everybody. Because everybody, I believe the diversity of thought, diversity of all the different views is a strength, and I need to make sure I get to meet with everybody. So I'd have that scheduled. That's why it's kind of that informal thing was actually became kind of routine. And I would also schedule time, like just time to have group meetings, like a group session, like at least once a month where I'd get, 10 people from each group. So I'd be with everybody at least, and they just sit down, just, you could ask 10 questions and you could sit down, just talk to me and ask me questions about anything.
So did you consider that training time then, or was that just relationship building time, or how did you approach that?
I mean, there's always opportunity for training, but I think that more is just relationship building and building a good team.
Mhm.
Building a team that knows each other and can understand each other and um, they can understand me. So when I use words, I can explain what I mean. Like for example, like one of the common terms I find that some people, especially Americans, when they hear it the first time, would think that it comes like almost a negative connotation, which is the word waste. You might use muda. That's what I learned from reading your
Yeah.
book.
Mm.
So that's
Right,
the word,
right.
right? So if you say somebody like, "Oh, you have work, the work that you're doing, there's waste in that work," that can be viewed, I think, initially as like, "Oh, wait, my boss is telling me that there's waste in my work. Oh no." Whereas I view it as, okay, well, we find these things that are inefficient. Potentially you're working on something which is not using your time fully effectively. And if we could basically have you simplify your work practices and remove things from it that are not really adding as much value, that creates more time for you to be working on things that are more meaningful. So that means you're working on more meaningful work. And you're also gives you more time to think about other things, be creative, and come up with other solutions that help maybe even impact the business even more.
Mhm.
So the word waste, like that terminal, like me talking to you right now, and you being in this podcast and talking about it. If I was just in a big, huge group session and I said the word waste, I would guarantee you 20 or 30% of that people in that audience would say, oh no, Ted is saying my work is wasteful. But when I explain it the way I just did, I think people realize, oh no, he's just trying to help us to make us more efficient. So we're doing more work and better, and my work is being more productive.
Mhm.
which I think is
Well,
empowering.
yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things that over the years I've learned is that when they've done some measurement on the amount of waste, as you put it, and rightfully so, uh, is about 25% of normal workload is wasted, meaning it's redundant. It has no real relationship to bringing value to the customer and that sort of thing. And I like how you put that where you were challenging them to think about their role and to think about them and what they might consider if it's a wasted kind of time or a wasted kind of effort that they put forth. Turning it into giving them the opportunity to learn from that and to achieve some level of efficiency on their own or
Exactly.
contribute to the group. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think one of the ways I learned about this is I would ask myself, okay, I would take what I felt were the best characteristics of the bosses that I've had and just try to take each of them and put them together into what I feel would be like the best boss. And I always felt that if a boss is listening to you and listening to what you have to say, and not only just listening, but actually implementing practices and putting my ideas into motion to help the business, that's empowering and it's addictive, and you want more of that. Um, so I've had bosses that were very much like that, and I'd said I wanted to emulate that.
Hmm. I think that's a real lesson for all of us to learn from two parts. One is emulating and listening and learning from your boss or bosses that you've had, and at the same time, then being able to turn that around and implement it yourself.
Mhm.
So that you've taken that information, converted it to knowledge, and then you've taken action to be able to improve yourself. Did you take that kind of philosophy in efforts to, say, conduct a training program for your team members, or did you do that formally, informally, or how did you focus on that?
So, ExxonMobil is a very large corporation, and there's a whole training process that could be from a variety of different levels. There can be some that are technical training, which would apply to the individual skills that the workers would do within an oil business. So, like for example, there's reservoir engineers who work on designing the wells and how we go about drilling our wells. There's a lot of technical training courses that people would take, and ExxonMobil will have a whole formal system in how to give those type of people, those engineers that training.
Hmm.
Geologists would also have their training, and geology is also very much a field enterprise. So there would be field trips where they go out to places like Utah or Colorado and look at rocks and outcrops and try to understand the geology. So there is specific training depending on where you are in the business um, on the technical aspects. But there's not only just technical aspects to being effective, there's also non-technical skills like communication skills, negotiation skills, um, in these type of things where there are formal trainings on those as well, which is part of our curriculum. And we had very rigorous standards. So like there's like what we call early competency milestones. Like within your first 5 years, these are the things that you should know to be efficient within the first 5 years. And then there's like advanced milestones where people will become like experts in the company, and there'll be a pathway to become an expert in a particular topic in the company. So we had all those. There's other things that I did as I became more and more familiar with lean, and I realized about how efficient I can make the organization by using lean, and how much I could talk about also the effects of this. But I had sessions where I just literally brought in lean experts, and we had sessions where we sat down as a whole group and talked about lean. And then we did a lot of demos and a lot of, you know, team building type of events where, you know, there's a lot of these little games and things you can play to basically show the process of lean and show how you start working together, how you can remove waste and efficiency. You can get much more efficient. Like there's like these little Lego exercises where you have to build some planes. And at first, when you start building all of them, you're like, you know, it takes you like 20 minutes to build two planes. But then as you start to, the team learns about how they can use different roles and how they can eliminate waste in building these planes. They can make like, 50 planes in like 10 minutes. They can improve their efficiency by orders of magnitude. So we did those type of trainings too. So I think your question was is how did we implement training and use training to basically help our employees? And I think there's structured technical and non-technical. And I think there's the non-technical side, I think there's a lot of trainings that I think you can use like things like Lean too.
Mhm. I think that's pretty fascinating, but because when you talk about like geologists and those that would be, college degreed type of individuals in the healthcare world, we have certified support staff, we have college level, we have bachelor's, master's, doctoral level, all over, which are supposedly more of the technical training. But what you're saying is that you found a need to continue to do technical training as the processes continued to grow and as the needs of the company continued to grow.
Please.
So
Especially as you become
I
more and more
understand.
specialized too.
Okay. Then the other thing that I found interesting about your training approach was some of the human side, meaning communication, meaning relationship building and that sort of thing, the listening component. And in today's world with AI, and if you can imagine yourself being a patient and going into an office, and you know, there's continual pressure about expanding the number of patients that are seen. There's limits on the time that you have to see patients and that sort of thing. That very often I find that there's very little training and little emphasis or even opportunities for staff to get to know the patients, to build a relationship. And so the technical training is one piece, but again, I really commend you for using the word communication and saying that the training component was really also related to doing those kinds of things, which I think in our healthcare world, we really need to emphasize more. So just put a different hat on. You're a patient. How does it feel? How would it feel if you would walk into the office and all they wanted to know was, okay, give me your insurance card, give me your driver's license to go sit down. Uh, you know, in other words, is there a need and a perspective? Have you felt something related to the need to build those relationships?
I mean, it's essential, I think, to have relationships, and especially when you work in an environment where you have complicated processes, where you have multiple people with different skills who are working together to achieve an outcome. And, like for example, I mean, I know you're dealing with healthcare, but if people aren't familiar probably with the oil business, but when we're drilling wells out in New Mexico, initially when we started our process, we have to apply for permits through the federal government to get locations to drill our wells. And we might have to start that 2 years before we even start drilling the well because we have to go through some federal approval process.
Hmm.
And to go through the federal approval process, we have to hire surveyors. We have to hire people to go out to the land to make sure that there's no endangered species on that land, to make sure we're not, in compliance with all the important environmental laws that are there so that we're not damaging the environment. And so that process, just to hire those people to get the permits, the environmentalists, the people that are surveying everything and get that together, that's just the planning of the well. Now, let alone now, once you have the well location, you have to go have a geologist to say, okay, now where exactly are you going to drill that well? How deep are you going to drill that well? How far are you going to go? We drill several miles down, and then we do what's called a horizontal well. We just do like a turn, and we drill out. We can drill out another 4 miles. Think about that. Think about where your house is right now, and then take a location 4 miles away. I mean, you're in the woodlands. You're driving all the way down the Woodlands Parkway. You're probably all the way down by the Lake Woodlands from our house. And so it's a long distance. So you have to basically plan that all out. And so you start to go down the list of the engineers, then you have the drillers, and then you have, I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I think the premise what I'm talking here about and what you're talking about with healthcare and people and patients, you have all these different people that are working together that have to deliver a product. And each one of those people working is delivering a product and they're giving it to a customer who's the next person down the line. In healthcare, you probably literally have a customer who's in your waiting room, who's also receiving a lot of these things, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
making those handoffs between the different people as you're getting your products and then dealing with the customer relies really good communication. All it takes is one time to drop the baton And if an analogy, if you're like in a relay race, if you drop a baton, you're not going to win that race. With all those handoffs, that was one of the analogies that I would use, is that I was talking about good teamwork and good communication, and thinking about like the best relay teams. They're not the ones that are the fastest. They're the ones that can pass that baton the quickest and be the most
I,
efficient with it.
I love your analogy because the word that stuck to my mind when you were talking about this is silos, where you'd hire the surveyor, and then you'd hire the compliance person, and you'd hire this and you'd hire that, and each one of them had their own task to do. But if they didn't communicate back and forth, if they didn't, as you use it, the relay from point A to point B to point C, or person A, B, C, D, and so on, the project would never come off.
Yeah.
You would never
Or
achieve that desired outcome.
exactly. And so there's lots of studies that show that. There was like a French team in the Olympics that basically they were the slowest runners. Like you look at like the American team, and each of the runners, they were faster than every other relay race person out there, like at an individual time. But like
Mhm.
I forget which team it was. I think it might have been the French. They were like slower, but because they were so good at passing the baton, they actually won the race. So
I love that.
it's and it's the worst thing that happens is that, like, for when we're doing these things, is when you're working on a product and you're making something and say, oh, well, this is what I was told to do. This is how it's always been done. Whenever I hear those words, that's like a red flag going off in my mind. I'm doing
Yeah,
this because the way it's always been done. So that means you may literally, I've had people who are working on something, literally spending weeks worth of effort building something, and like taking in a silo, throwing it over the silo, and the person on the other side never used it. So it's like you
that's
literally just,
waste.
that's Muda. I mean, that's like the work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I mean, the person working on that, wouldn't it be nice to know what their customer wants, what their customer really needs? And that comes, what you have to do to understand what your customer wants is you have to talk to them. You have to know them. You have to communicate with them. You have to listen. And so when you listen to that, oh, that's what you really want. Oh, if the little light bulb, that's all you really need. Oh, I can do that in 5 minutes. Okay, then don't work on it for a week. So they do it in five
Yeah.
minutes. Now they have all this other time to think about other things that they were creative and they'd want to do.
When you use the term customer, is that because you're talking about person A to person B to person C, or is that
Yeah.
because it's a separate company?
Well,
Uh,
all the above. There's external customers, but I think every time you're working on something and you're making a product, or you're working on delivering a product, you're going to give that product to some down the line. That person you're giving it to down the line is your customer. So there are people, like, even within my like, I would be in my group and we would have to work with the drillers. The drillers would have to drill the well. The drillers would need information from my team. I would say the drillers are they're sometimes you can be this adversarial relationship. You imagine in a company, well, there's this group, that group, and people can be fighting with each other. And I would tell my team, our goal is to make our drillers as happy as possible. Because when our drillers get the information they need and they can drill a well faster, they save our company money. They make more money for our company. And that's our end goal, is to drill wells that supply all the energy people need at a lowest cost and not having any waste. And so let's just listen to the drillers. And it's like a totally different philosophy rather than us versus them. It's how do we help them be better? And it's a positive message that I think everybody really works well with. And I'll tell you what, the drillers in the company used to be really adversarial, or could be, because we had a really great working relationship. They were great.
so another really key point that you make, though, is your end customer was what you were talking about. Your end customer is the one who buys your product
Hmm.
and, drives their car or heats their home or whatever it is that they would have. And and that was your goal, was to meet the needs and the demands of the end customer, and not necessarily to do it as cheaply and as effectively as you could. Uh, but you didn't emphasize the profit for the business. Even though you said that, I got a feel that your emphasis was on coming up with the best product for the end customer.
Because if you come up with the best product for the end customer in the most efficient way possible, what that means is that you are delivering value to your customer that they're willing to pay for, and you're doing it as the most efficient way possible. And that means that you are going to be you're going to put yourself on top, you're going to win because
Mhm.
you're going to be the company that can do that the most efficiently. If you have your customers and you can meet your customers' needs better than anybody else, more cheaply than anybody else, you're going to win.
That speaks to a concept of the culture of the organization. And there's two parts to my question. One is, did that culture, that theme, that mission pervade the entire organization? Or is that something that was Ted's bailiwick? So the second part of the question is, you talked about lean and uh, and implementing and utilizing the components of lean. Is that something that you developed, or is that something that was and therefore the culture that you established within your group of folks was a lean culture? Is that the kind of thing that also was pervasive within the Exxon world, or is that a TED world?
It's pervasive with the Exxon world, but I would say a couple of things. One, the lot of this, our current CEO Darren Woods ha- was is very strategy focused and making sure that we developed a strategy and for the corporation, and he was he was championing, he was the lead to make sure that we were as a company going to win, and identifying what we call brutal truths and how we can make our company better. And so he was the architect of all that, from almost about, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago, believe it or not. So he implemented all that. As I mentioned, when I was working with the company all the way from the day one, I didn't put the word lean to what I was doing, but my management style was very lean oriented, like eliminating waste, trying to be servant based leadership. We had a great leader who came into our company, Bart Care, who started implementing, say, I'm going to start, he put a name to it and started, he was championing all these lean concepts through our unconventional business. And then when he started leading this for the organization, I immediately gravitated towards this and I said, this is the name that I've been trying to do for my whole career. And Bart led the organization through that, and through Bart's leadership, and me, trying to implement these practices, we turned our business around in one of the most profitable parts of the ExxonMobil.
Mhm,
Other parts of ExxonMobil are implementing these practices now as well. So, so to answer your question is, I've started doing it ever since I was first in the company, because I just
mhm,
really don't like waste. I like to do things efficiently. I like to be effective communicator and try to make sure that there's no miscommunication and clarity when I communicate. That's just who I am and what I like to do. And then Bart, the senior leader who started implementing this, put a name to it and started implementing it into the company.
mhm. Uh, so again, you've talked about in terms of lean, you've talked about utilizing the brains of the staff, getting them to be more involved in accepting the philosophy and accepting the approach of dealing with waste, eliminating waste, and being able to move forward to serve the end customer. So that's a great lean philosophy of bringing value to the customer through elimination of waste, redundancy, different things of that nature that cause that waste to occur, which leads to a uh, better product and a relatively inexpensive, if you will, or at least less costly product because you were more efficient in making it happen. I think boy, that's a lesson everybody should learn, whether you're in the oil business or in the healthcare business. I think that's just amazing.
I also
Let
think that
me
it's
let
also,
me
oh,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I also think, when I first started hearing these concepts and some of these words, my reaction would be, well, if you hear the words automation, you're like efficiency, it almost in a way sounds like less like there's less connection. You're like almost like automating things. You're becoming more like a robot. You're less human. And I think that people have that misconception that I think it's everything but that. I think it's the exact opposite. I think the more time you start listening and connecting with people and making people do more valuable work, the people feel more appreciated. They feel more empowered. Um, it's an empowering thing that allows teams to build and become successful. And successful teams that are become winning teams is really contagious. And when you have, if you've ever been on a team that just starts to dominate and just starts to win and just start to do really well, it's a great feeling. And that, and it's also at the same time working with a team where everybody is empowered to be their best. You have management support behind you to try to eliminate things that are maybe not efficient. I think if anything, that is the most empowering, humanizing thing is you have a boss that's actually listening to you, um, that is implementing the work and ideas that you're coming up with. I think there's nothing more humanizing than that. In fact, the exact
Mhm.
opposite is to have a boss that's disconnected, just telling you to do things, and you're making work products and throwing over a fence that nobody's using. To me, that is not rewarding at all. So
Yeah.
these concepts to me are the most humanizing, and you have the best relationships and successful outcomes from it. So to me, they're completely compatible. In fact, they reinforce each other.
Can I say yay?
My experience. I mean, that's I have the practical experience to show that that's the truth, and I have all
Yeah. Well,
hundreds of examples to show it.
that's why I wanted to talk with you because it seems like we in healthcare say, well, we can only learn from people in healthcare. And I don't think that's true. I think we can learn from people like you and the experiences that you've had, and that we need to incorporate your philosophy into our world, and which will achieve that end goal of improving patient care and the outcome for every patient that we treat. Uh, So that's, let me ask one more quick question, and this is not a quick answer, but I don't want to go too much longer. Uh,
Okay.
AI, is that, if you looked at your 80 people that you had, uh, would AI take jobs, or would AI improve the performance of the individuals that you would have within your purview?
I mean, I think there's some. To be honest, I think that's a good question. That there's still some work that has to be done on that to really to see what or history or time will tell. But I think there's a lot of different things through history that if you go back and history repeats itself. Those that don't know history tend to just not learn from it and repeat its mistakes. But
Mhm,
if you look at the Industrial Revolution and a lot of the explanations about like when you have a new technology come out and that, like, for example, it becomes more efficient, like you can be more efficient at manufacturing things that you're now that you have these machines that came out, people were thinking, now you don't need people there, you're going to take away all these jobs. I forget the name of it right now, but there's a gentleman who came up with this idea that actually, when you have these new inventions that come out and create more opportunity and do things more efficiently, they actually create new industries, and those new industries create more jobs. So it's kind of like when I first thought, like, okay, now you have all these, like when the steam engine came out, like, well, okay, well, with steam engine came out, you're not going to need people to plow the fields. It's like, well, you created whole new industries of railroads. You created a whole industrial manufacturing. You made all these new products. You have like now you have cities that are have like electricity and heating. You have all these things that get start built from it, and you have all this economic growth. I think AI is kind of like another tool, kind of like when Excel first came out, the spreadsheets. People said, oh, you have these spreadsheets. You're not going to need engineers to do stuff. But actually, it just made more efficient for engineers to do more work in their spreadsheets and
mhm,
accountants and
mhm,
get more people using that. I think the one thing that's unique about AI is that it's not just it's one of the first things that actually a lot of these other tools I mentioned in that previously were replacing human muscle. Like they were able to do more horsepower and do more lifting and do more things and more energy. AI
mhm,
is the first thing that's actually challenging the mental aspect, that it can maybe do a lot of the mental activities that people
mhm.
were exclusively doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how you using AI will enable us to do things differently, create new problems, and um, I think if anything, it's just going to create whole new, more opportunities, and there's more things that are going to come out of it to basically create new opportunities for people to do things. That's
And
that's the,
and that and that becomes a good management lesson, a good learning lesson for all of us. So
yes.
I know, and again, we could talk. We could sit here and talk for another 2 hours, Ted. But I really want to wrap this up and say thank you for your willingness to share your information, your knowledge that you've accumulated in that 28 years with Exxon, how you grew personally, and how then you were able to communicate that kind of growth and share that growth with others within your organization, which hopefully leads them to improving their performance. So, Ted, I want to thank you very much, and I want to encourage the listeners to subscribe to this channel so that you can be aware of more of these types of episodes. And I want to challenge everyone to think in terms of the Olympic medals. So, Ted, a good relay medal. How's that? Uh,
Yeah.
and what I want to think, what I want people to think about is, based on what Ted has shared with us today, have you used any of it? And if you have used it, have you done it at the bronze level, the silver level, or the gold level? And why would you put yourself at that particular level? And what do you think you could do based on what Ted has shared with us today to improve from medal, say a bronze medal, to a silver medal or to a gold medal? And what I want to do is I want to encourage you to think about this and then share that with me by submitting an email to odahl@owendallconsulting.com, which is my email address. And that what we'll do eventually is we'll share those insights that you share from the learning that we are participating in today, that you will be able to share that, and we'll share that with others so that we can all continue to learn. So as we move forward, again, I want to thank Ted for his time and his willingness to share this knowledge that he's had. And I just admire him very much for everything that he's done. And again, thank you, Ted, for sharing that. Please remember to subscribe and share your medal status with us in the future. Thanks, everyone, for listening.